Welcome back, you guys, and happy 2020. I actually forgot to tell you guys that in my last video. We just uploaded an empties video, and I realized that I never said Happy New Year, but that video was pre-filmed, so I had no idea it was going to be posted at late as it was. So anyways, Happy New Year's to you guys. I hope you guys had a wonderful and safe New Year's. One of my resolutions was to drink more water. That got shot down the next day. It was not well. I had drank a little bit, so I was not feeling anything that day. And then yesterday, I just forgot to drink as much water as I should have. So I'm going to work on that one. My New Year's resolution is also to move my YouTube schedule around a little bit because I feel like it'll be a little bit more beneficial, as well as incorporating more and more videos to my schedule. I would love to at least double the amount of videos that I posted last year over into this year, which means I would love to be a daily content creator on YouTube. Although it is a little bit difficult for me. It just got a little bit difficult. I noticed the last 4 months, it got really difficult with having a 6 p.m. schedule post because 6 p.m. is dinner time. The kids have practices and stuff. So I could post a video, but I could never hang around, respond, or I would be in and out of stuff doing it. So I just felt like I was kind of lacking in taking care of my channel while it was going. So I figured if I do a morning post with a 9 a.m. schedule upload, that would be perfect because it's kids go to school, I'm able to post, then I'm able to film, and I can dedicate a solid 8 hours to doing whatever I want to do on YouTube. That is a very long intro. My goodness stuff. Now that I'm done talking your ears off, we are going to get jumping into our favorites of 2019. I have them categorized. I feel so productive. So I had 3 primers this month that it really stood out. I know that sounds like not a lot, I feel like, because I talked about so many primers throughout the year. But when I was going through my videos, I noticed that there was a reoccurrence with a couple of them. So the first one I wanted to mention is the YENSA Tone Up Essential Glow. This has got 8 Super Blacks Essence. I feel like this is just hydrated enough where it makes your skin look like it's freshly moisturized. It still gives a little bit of hydration to the skin, and it does a really good job at just giving an all-over nice base for your foundation. I thought I could do this without coffee, and I was like, no, I think I need it. The other one that I really fell in love with also, which again, I say this every time I talk about this product, but this here is the Fenty Beauty Pro Filter Soft Matte Primer. That primer for me really helped when I was struggling with really bad bouts of acne throughout the year, and I was using a lot of heavy medication and it was drying out my skin. I felt like it really helped hydrate my skin, really helped apply my foundation, and it wouldn't make my foundation pick up any dryness. So those 2 primers were definitely a huge win for me, and I expected to include my Tarte Smoothing Primer. That is definitely one that I know I mentioned in my last year's favorite for 2018, but when I was going through my monthly favorites and any sort of videos where I was talking about primers or anything like that, these 2 kept coming up. So I figured you guys needed to be in this year's recap. I feel like this year I've done really well with my foundations. I've really stuck to what I know, and I've only tried a few, but these here, I'm sure you guys will know a couple of them if you guys watch my videos all the time. I talk about a few of these quite often. So we'll start off with the first one, which is no surprise. I talk about this in multiple videos, but it is the Bare Minerals Bare Pro Liquid Foundation. Now, I am in the shade Pecan number 18. It has to be the best foundation that I have found that has worked so well for my skin. It really covers my skin. It really lasts throughout the day. When I mix it with other foundations, it performs even better. It's definitely one of those foundations where I don't ever worry about what kind of day I'm gonna have, because it definitely holds up. The other one I wanted to mention was the Bare Minerals Original. This is the powder foundation. I got a lot of questions when I started using this powder foundation. A lot of you guys wanted to know how I wore it, how I made it work for my skin, and I was definitely there with you guys when I first tried this out, when it was first there. You had to buff it, you had to tap, buff, swirl, all of this stupid stuff, right? But it is definitely one of those foundations where it does take a little bit of a learning curve, but once you get the hang of it, it is one of the easiest foundations to apply. I wear this more so on an everyday basis because I feel like it's less clogging for my skin, and it definitely makes my skin feel like I don't feel guilty if I wear this and then I take a nap or I pass out or something. This was definitely a standout winner in my books. The Bare Minerals line was definitely the it for me this year. Then we move on to the next foundation, which is the ColourPop No Filter Foundation. This foundation is bomb. If you're a little bit skeptic about this one, and if you tried this one, I think if you've tried this one and you liked it, you really would enjoy this one. I personally like to apply that foundation with a sponge more so than a brush, because I feel like with a brush, it tends to just emphasize texture a little bit more versus when I use it with a sponge. So that is my preference with that one. This past year was the year of concealers. Am I right? There was so many concealers. Like, it was insane. I couldn't keep up. The first one is the CoverGirl True Blend Concealer, or Undercover Concealer. This one here is really great. It has a very similar characteristic to like the L'Oreal one, I feel like, except this one to me dries pretty quickly. I was kind of impressed by how quickly it dried for myself. But the last one I wanted to mention is this one here, which is the Stay Naked Correcting Concealers by Urban Decay. So these are a little bit newer. These two, I've got to give it to Urban Decay, man. These were really great. These remind me so much of the Naked Skin concealers, except I almost like these a little bit more because I don't know. I feel like I need to buy it just so I can do a really good comparison, because I want to say that they almost have the same coverage, but I love the way that this sits underneath my eyes. It's very, very lightweight. I've also used these alone as like concealing on my skin, and I won't say that I prefer these over the Too Faced if I was like just using it for like everyday concealing, a spot concealer, but these are great. I'm really enjoying these. I have two shades here. I have 30 NY and 40 NN, and I use them both. It does need to be set, which is fine with me, but for those of you guys wondering, these are amazing. Oh, you've got to be able to hear that. Those are my kids. They're wearing bricks on their feet, and they're running around my house. I only have two powders that I'm going to feature. I have one loose powder and then one pressed powder. Now my loose powder is no surprise, and it's been out for a while now, but I freaking love this powder, you guys. I for sure will be getting another one of these, even though I have a bunch of other powders down there. This one here, which is the Too Faced Born This Way Ethereal Setting Powder, it's a game changer for me. This is the only powder I can use to bake underneath my eyes, which is what I did today, and I don't have any sort of like heaviness feeling to my eyes. Like, it definitely just feels soft and bright and highlighted, and I love it for that reason. It doesn't pick up my foundation. For me, it's just an all-around great product. It's super finely milled, it's really easy to work with, and it's just a great powder, and I can't say enough good things about it. I rave about it way too much here on my channel. I'm going to mention two pressed powders. One of them I just recently got here in the last couple of weeks. Well, the main one from 2019 that I fell in love with is the CoverGirl Vitalist Healthy Powder. And you guys can tell I love this thing, and I've raved about this over and over. This is one that feels very lightweight on the skin. This is also one of those powders that I feel like if I don't have anything to blot, I can just reapply it on top and it doesn't get cakey. Like, it's just a miracle product to me. It's really great. You need to try it. But the other one that I'm testing out that I just recently received also from Urban Decay is the new Stay Naked The Fix. I picked up the shade 40 NN, which looks like this. The packaging itself is beautiful, you guys. Like, they nailed it when it came to this packaging. I love it so much. And I'm going to tell you right now, for spoiler alert, for my January favorites, I'm in love with this powder. I can tell you right now, I'm going to hit pan on it very, very quickly. The dent, even the emblem on here that it did have, isn't even there anymore. The only thing I will say with this one I've noticed is that it does kick up a lot of powder on top of it, but it's good. I have two blushes for this year that I felt like I dove to a lot more than any other blush this year, aside from like my Shop My Stash, which forced me to get into it. The first one I have here is the Pretty Vulgar Make Them Blush. This is Hush Blush. We got this in our BoxyCharm. It's definitely got that more muted pink tone to it. It gives off a nice flush to the skin, but I love it because it's definitely one of those blushes that's got color to it, so it's very easy to apply on the skin. It is very pigmented, so for me, I definitely feel like just a little bit is all I need, but it's also very long lasting. I've really been enjoying the brand Pretty Vulgar. One of those brands where if it wasn't for BoxyCharm, I probably would have never even dove into them. And every time I've received something from Pretty Vulgar, I've fallen in love with it. But this here has got to be my standout blush. The other blush, which I talked about in my underrated products, I believe, is the Topshop blush, you guys. This is the matte powder blush in Game Changer. Again, this blush was just one of those hits for me. Like, I did not expect a whole lot from Topshop makeup, but this one here was just so beautiful on the skin. I used it so many times in my videos, off camera, and I just kept reaching for it, and I just found it to be such an amazing blush. It doesn't last as long as like the Pretty Vulgar one does, but nonetheless, it made it into my 2019s. I do have two bronzers that stood out for me this year. The first one is the Maybelline City Bronzer, and all three of the shades are gorgeous. I have all three. I play around with shade 200 and 300. 300 in the summer and 200 like all the time. It's actually what I'm wearing today. And this here is my ride or die bronzer from the drugstore, you guys. I have played around with a few other ones that were kind of popular throughout 2019, and for me, I just kept going back to this bronzer. It's definitely got a little bit more of a cooler tone, but it's not super cool tone, which I appreciate. You have the Dragon Beauty Face Palette, and I really only use this palette for the bronzer, and this bronzer here is definitely one of the bronzers that I find myself going to all the time. Every time I think about a bronzer that I want to take with me or I want to use, I always dive into this one, or I dive into the Maybelline one. But this one here is definitely one that won my heart over really quickly. The only downside to this palette is that she doesn't sell this in singles. So once I run out of this, I'm pretty much done. I don't feel like I would spend the money on this entire palette for just this thing, because this is really the only shade, sadly, that I really like in here. But I feel like if she was to come out with singles or just bronzers in general, I would definitely jump on that wagon and buy one of these, because I really did enjoy this bronzer. For some reason, this year with highlighters, I was really into the lighter aspect of highlighters. Like last year for me, definitely glowy, super high done, like hello, here's my highlight. This year it's more like I just want something dainty. I want something soft. I want something to look like it's glowing, but nothing too heavy, you know? This product here was the reason why I wanted more of the daintier, softer highlights. It's the Benefit Dandelion Twinkle highlighter. I know it's been out for a little bit now, but I couldn't believe how long I waited to play around with this. I don't highlight this like with my nose or anything, but I like to use this on the high points of my cheek, because I find that this will still give me the highlight that I want without emphasizing texture. And if you have like really large pores like I do, or any sort of texture right in this area, something like this I feel like would be very beneficial for you. But if I want just a little bit of extra glow this past year, and it is the Too Faced How Many Do I Give? And this one here was their Erika Jayne and Too Faced collaboration. When I first saw this collection, I was definitely not impressed with it. And then, holy moly, but look at that. Just swatching that. Look at that highlight. The way that this product performs is incredible. For me, this is definitely one of those highlights where like 2018 stuff would have been like, oh my gosh, give me everything. Like, look at this. Do you see? Like, you just need a little bit and it will highlight every part that you want. When they announced this collection, it got a lot of heat for it. And I will say, I had no intentions on purchasing any of it. Some reason Too Faced decided to send it to me, so I gave it a shot, and I fell in love with quite a few of their products. Fell in love with this highlighter. I do have her eyeshadow palette. Her eyeshadow palette is actually really great. I think the biggest downfall to that palette is just that the way that they're shaped makes it look very unappealing and very difficult to look at. And I get that, because even when I first saw it, I was like, oh gosh, no. But playing with it, I found a lot of really great matches and a lot of really great shades to use. So I do and have seen this collection. I have seen this collection at TJ Maxx. So if you can get your hands on this highlighter or the eyeshadow palette, I would definitely say it's there. The quality is good on those palettes. This one I have is a very new collection that recently launched, but it definitely made it to my top favorite. This is the PIXI and RACHLOVES palette. The layers the Layers Highlighting Palette, and it says Glow On. I love to use lace for the tip of my nose and or my inner corner highlight, but these two highlights, single by themselves or even combined, make such a great highlight, and I love it also because it doesn't emphasize texture. The only brow pencil, or brow product I should say, that I tried this year that I really fell in love with, and I want to repurchase it but I'm kind of on the fence with it, is the Urban Decay Brow Blade. It's got a really cool ink stain on one side, and then it's got the pencil, which is waterproof, on the other side. I really got this because of the ink stain portion of this. I thought that that was such a neat idea. I know other brands have it, but for some reason I really wanted to try this one from Urban Decay. So I picked it up, fell in love with it, but as I noticed, as I would wear it, I would look in the light and I would notice that like my brows would be really warm on the inner corners and then really dark on the outer corners. So the only thing I don't like about this brow product is that you get a more cooler tone pencil and a warmer tone ink stain. And I don't know if that applies to all of the brow products. This one here is dark brown, which is what I use, but the brow pencil side is bomb. It is super pigmented, super creamy. So I would go in and line like the under portion of my brow and then take a spoolie and just kind of flick it upward to blend in the product because it was just that pigmented. The other thing I don't like about dual-ended brushes like this is you don't get a spoolie, so it's kind of like you always have to have two brow pencils on hand. I don't know if that bothers you, but after a while, like, I get kind of irritated by it. The very first one we have is the Urban Decay Perversion Mascara. This one here is the waterproof one that I have, and I will definitely tell you guys that I couldn't tell a whole lot of a difference between the waterproof and the regular. Really, could not. This one here has that super fluffy, thick wand that I really love. It gives me that oomph that I need to my lashes, and when I combine it with a more lengthening mascara, it gives me that amazing look to my lashes. The other reason why I really like this mascara is that it doesn't flake on me. Actually, when I think about it, the three mascaras I'm going to talk about, none of them flake, which is great. The next one I have is by CoverGirl, which is the Exhibitionist Mascara. I did a review on that mascara, which I don't think mascara reviews are very relevant anymore, but I was so impressed with that mascara, you guys. I fell in love with it. One that is very similar to it, but I still prefer the CoverGirl one, is the BFF mascara by ColourPop. So if you've tried that ColourPop mascara and you really liked it, but you want to try something different that's very similar, try out the CoverGirl, because the CoverGirl Exhibitionist Mascara, that is like on my list as my #1 mascara to pick up once I'm done with all these mascaras. And then the last mascara I fell in love with also was the So Fierce Mascara by Revlon. That mascara there is amazing if you like more lengthening and separating mascaras. I'm not normally somebody that likes that because I don't have a whole lot of lashes to begin with, but I found that that mascara was like the best mascara to pair with other mascaras. So the So Fierce mascara paired with the Exhibitionist mascara from CoverGirl was like my dynamic duo. So those two mascaras will be the first mascaras to be picked up the moment I am finished with these mascaras or I get really low. I do want to mention a few palettes that really stood out to me this year that I fell in love with, and one here is very new, but I had to mention it because it's just the best. The first one we have is the Full Spectrum CoverGirl eyeshadows. CoverGirl's revamped their line here in the past 2 years incredibly well. They've done so many changes to their line. These eyeshadow palettes were definitely there. They had the pigment to them. They have the colors. The blending colors are there to them. They've got really good shade selections to choose from. And every palette just has a really good color story to them. So you can definitely intermix them and play around with them, or you can just stick to one palette and really get really beautiful soft looks. The next one I have here is the NARS Skin Deep Eyeshadow Palette. I mentioned this one a few times throughout the year of how much I loved this palette, you guys, and this is definitely still one of my top favorite palettes. I actually just did a video on like my fall favorite palettes, and I want to say I mentioned this palette in there, so I'm not going to speak a whole lot on it, but if you guys want like more in-depth review and stuff, go ahead and check that out. Very neutral, perfect for the everyday girl. You want something with just brown tones, something very easy on the eyes, something you can recreate all the time. This is a really great palette. I also love that they did the large pan sizes here on the top. I was so impressed with this palette. I wanted to mention this brand as a whole instead of just the palettes itself, because this brand was a new brand to me in 2019 and I instantly fell in love with it. So these here are by Alter Ego. I have so many different palettes from them. They've been kind enough to send these to me, but some of these palettes are supposed to be dupes for the Natasha Denona palettes. I was floored by this brand. I was floored by the eyeshadow palette quality of this. The weight and the feel of this palette is very luxurious. The colors in here are very easy to work with. This here is the Sahara palette. So if you're wanting to play it safe and you want to try out this brand, definitely try out the Sahara. My favorite palette that they came out with, and still hands down, is the Goddess palette. And that is because it's got more of those, like, they're different tones. They're not your stereotypical tones that you see all the time in your palettes. They're vibrant, but still you can get a little bit of depth in it and you can just play around with it a little bit more. If you take out the greens, you can still do a neutral look. It's just got a lot of there's just a lot of goodness to this palette. The other one that I recently just received from them also, which is what I'm wearing on my eyes today. I haven't played with it but like this one time, but they just recently came out with the Aurora palette. It has more of those summer feel vibes to it. You got a little bit more brighter yellows and some like more hot pink and hot orange tones in here. So, and then their last palette they have is their Dream palette. Then we move into the Morphe and Jeffree Star palette. I really wish this would have gotten a little bit more love than I feel like it did. I think a lot of people were more irritated by the fact that he collabed with Morphe instead of just creating his own palette. The colors in here, man, I was just so floored by it. I would definitely say that his formula is very reminiscent of like the Jaclyn Hill palette formula, the white palette, not her other ones, but the white one is really reminiscent of this palette. So that formula is very similar to this one. Although I feel like this formula is just a little bit better. I love this palette because it's very big, so you've got a lot of colors in it, but you can definitely play around with like hot colors and create like a very vibrant look, or you can just do a very basic look. Like you got it all in this palette. Then I have Tati's palette, which again, I did do a review on this palette as well. And you guys, I love this palette. It's such a great palette. It's actually what I'm wearing on my lower lash line today. I dive into this palette still for like the mattes and more so for like this shimmer portion, or metallic portion is what she calls it. So the last two palettes I have, one is very new, like within the last couple of weeks new. And then the next one I have is a couple of months old, but I did mention this a few times that I did want to pick up more ColourPop palettes. I wanted to build on my collection because I didn't have a whole lot of ColourPop palettes. And then they started coming out with these big ass palettes, like these massive palettes. And I was like, that's where it's at. That's how I'm gonna get my fix on ColourPop. So the first one I picked up was the So Jaded ColourPop palette with Kathleen Lights. And I was super excited about this because I felt like this would be the perfect palette to try out. They're more vibrant colors, they're more jewel tone colors, and I dive into this palette a lot for like the blues and the greens, and I think the blues and the greens is what I dive into it. Oh, and this purple. I actually love to use this purple like on my lid as a whole. Just such beautiful colors. This was the first palette that I picked up since my last It's a Pleasure palette. This palette I have is the Bare Necessities palette, you guys. I picked this palette up. Know that I've only had this for a few weeks, but I had to mention it in here because I was like, I can't wait until February to talk about this palette. I did not expect to enjoy this palette as much as I did. I actually didn't plan to even pick this up when it first came out because I was like, there is no reason for me to get a massive palette with just neutrals. But there is something about this palette that every single color in this palette is just slightly different. So it shows up very different on the eyes. And I've played around with this now for the past couple of weeks. I've solely used this palette all alone, nothing else. And I have created some really great easy looks, all matte looks, one color eye looks. I've created some really fun like sparkly eye looks. There's just so many options to play around with in this palette. And if you guys want to see a tutorial using it, I was definitely planning to include it with like a bunch of new makeup, like testing a whole bunch of new makeup. But you guys let me know what you guys want to see using this palette. This is definitely where it's at. I do know that they just recently came out with the It's All Good or something like that palette, which is another big one. And I didn't end up picking up that one because I was going to, but then I saw swatches. Not the swatches that Trend Mood posted, because sometimes I feel like those are kind of lies, but like other people's swatches. Like I just like was looking around and I found other people's swatches and it was kind of like wishy-washy, or I just wasn't really excited about it. So I decided to skip on that palette and just still sticking with this. And even though it's like all neutrals and just browns and stuff, I'm still so excited about this palette. Like it's definitely, it's giving me all kinds of feels. We have 4 brands to talk about for lipsticks. I'm going to go through this pretty quickly. But the first one I wanted to talk about is by Buxom. And these here are the Vava Plump. I want to say that these came out in 2018. But you guys, I still can't get over them. I find the formula to be exactly what I like. This is definitely not everybody's cup of tea because this formula doesn't completely dry. It's long wearing. It's long lasting. It's definitely between a lipstick, like a creamy lipstick, and like a liquid lipstick. And after I wear this throughout the day, my lips don't feel like they need a bunch of moisture to them. So if that's something you're willing to try out, or you do like that kind of formula, you should definitely give these a try. Liquid lipsticks are very difficult for me to find, and if I find one that I fall in love with, then I want to have every single shade in there. And the first brand I have is the PIXI by Petra one, which you guys see me wearing this all the time. And I think I fell in love with this formula so much because of their reds. I am not somebody that likes to step out of the house wearing like a bold red lip because I know throughout the day it'll feel funny throughout my lips and I'll take it off and then I'll look like I have a hot mess. This is also one of the only formulas that I will wear throughout the day and like reapply, and I don't have to worry about it getting splotchy or looking funny on my lips throughout the day. The last formula I fell in love with this year, I actually just repurchased, but I made a massive purchase and I bought some more liquid lipsticks from her line, and these are the Kylie Cosmetic liquid lipsticks. I freaking love her liquid lipsticks and her lip liners. They are both some of the best formulas that I have tried out in a very, very long time. It took me a very, very long time to jump on that bandwagon. That there is my yearly favorites, you guys. Those are my yearly favorites. That is everything that I fell in love with this past year. I will say that I feel like last year was definitely a point in my life where I really tried to run through everything I already have, really tried to use up a lot of my products without repurchasing as much as I did the past couple of years, and I'm proud of myself. What were your favorite products of the year? Let me know down below, and if you guys are new to my channel, I hope you guys will stick around and subscribe to my channel as well. Thank you so much for spending some time with me. I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day, evening, night, whatever it is, and I will see you guys all in my next video, and I love you. Bye.